in the system. The baby, Joy, had stopped whimpering and was now sleeping peacefully in May's arms, her tiny hand gripping May's work uniform with surprising strength. The trust fund documents showed regular deposits scheduled for the next 18 years, but money wasn't what concerned May at that moment. It was the vulnerability of this tiny human being, discarded like garbage despite all her family's wealth. Looking around the empty alley, May noticed a security camera pointing in her direction. She knew that whatever decision she made in the next few moments would change not only her life but also the fate of this innocent child. The weight of this responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders as the first rays of sunlight began to paint the sky in shades of pink and gold. The sound of early morning traffic was starting to build in the distance, and May knew she needed to act fast. She had always lived her life by following rules and doing what was expected of her. But sometimes, she realized, life presents situations where the right path isn't immediately clear. As she looked down at the sleeping baby in her arms, she felt a connection she couldn't explain, a calling to protect this child, regardless of the consequences. What happened in the next few hours would set in motion a chain of events that would unravel decades of secrets, challenge the definitions of family and wealth, and test the boundaries of love and sacrifice. But for now, May simply stood in that quiet alley, holding a baby who had been thrown away by those who had everything, found by someone who had almost nothing. The decision May made that morning would haunt her thoughts for years to come. She chose to take Joy to the police station, but not before carefully photographing all the documents with her old smartphone. Her hands trembled as she pushed open the heavy glass doors of the precinct, the baby still sleeping peacefully in her arms. Officer Chen, a kind-faced woman in her 30s, listened intently as May recounted her discovery. The police station buzzed with activity around them, but May felt as if she and Joy were in their own bubble of calm. As she spoke, she noticed how the officer's eyes kept darting to the expensive blanket and the sealed envelope of documents. "You did the right thing bringing her here," Officer Chen said, but there was something in her voice, a note of concern that made May's heart race. The officer carefully examined the documents, her expression growing more serious with each page she read. "This is unusual. The bank account, the law firm involved, these aren't ordinary abandonment cases." Within hours, the story of the millionaire's abandoned baby had spread through the police department. Detectives were called in, and May found herself sitting in an interview room, repeating her story again and again. They asked about every detail, the position of the dumpster, the exact time of discovery, whether she had seen anyone suspicious in the area. What surprised May most was their interest in the law firm mentioned in the documents. The detectives exchanged meaningful glances when they read the name. "Wong and Associates," one of them muttered. "They handle the biggest family estates in the city. Something doesn't add up here." As the day wore on, May couldn't bring herself to leave the station. She had called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years, knowing she wouldn't be able to focus on her route. Her mother had left 3 worried voicemails, but May couldn't find the words to explain what had happened. The baby had been taken to the hospital for examination, but the doctors reported that despite the cold, she was perfectly healthy. Joy, if that was really her name, had clearly been well cared for before being abandoned. Her clothing was from an exclusive children's boutique, and her immunization records were up to date with vaccines from a prestigious pediatric clinic. Late in the afternoon, a well-dressed woman arrived at the station. She introduced herself as Rita Wong, the senior partner of Wong and Associates. Her presence seemed to electrify the entire precinct. She spoke quietly with the detectives for over an hour while May waited, her stomach in knots. Finally, Ms. Wong approached May. "We need to talk," she said, her voice low and controlled. "What you found this morning, it's connected to one of our most sensitive cases." She paused, studying May's face. "Would you be willing to help us? This goes deeper than you can imagine." May thought about her simple life, her predictable routine, her modest dreams, her responsibility to her mother. She thought about Joy's innocent face and the mystery of why a wealthy family would abandon their child in such a way. Looking at Ms. Wong's expensive suit and perfectly manicured nails, May realized she was being pulled into a world she had only glimpsed through the windows of the buildings on her route. "What kind of help do you need?" May asked, her voice steadier than she expected. Ms. Wong glanced around the busy precinct. "Not here. Come to my office tomorrow morning. And please, don't discuss this with anyone, not even your family. Lives could depend on your discretion." As May left the police station that evening, the city felt different somehow. The familiar streets she had walked for years seemed to hold new secrets. The gleaming high-rises where she collected trash every morning now loomed over her like silent witnesses to countless untold stories. At home, her mother was waiting up, worried sick. May managed to explain that she had been helping the police with an investigation, keeping the details vague. But as she lay in bed that night, sleep eluded her. She kept seeing Joy's face, kept wondering about the family that had left her, kept thinking about Ms. Wong's cryptic words. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Thank you for finding her. Watch. You're back." May stared at the message until her screen went dark, her heart pounding. The simple act of doing her job had somehow connected her to something much bigger and potentially dangerous. The next morning, as she prepared to visit the law firm instead of starting her usual route, May carefully tucked the phone with the photographs of Joy's documents into her pocket. Something told her she would need proof of what she had found, proof that somewhere in this city, a wealthy family had chosen to abandon their baby in a dumpster rather than face whatever circumstances had driven them to such desperation. The sun was rising over the city skyline, painting the windows of the high-rises in shades of gold and pink, just like the morning before. But for May, nothing would ever look quite the same again. She was about to step into a world of wealth and power, armed with nothing but her integrity and the truth about what she had found in that dumpster. Whatever secrets she was about to uncover, she knew one thing for certain: she would do whatever it took to ensure that baby Joy would be safe. Wong and Associates occupied the entire 50th floor of a gleaming downtown skyscraper. May felt out of place as she stepped out of the elevator, her worn shoes sinking into plush carpet. The receptionist, despite May's simple clothes, treated her with unexpected deference. Clearly, she had been expected. Ms. Wong's office offered a breathtaking view of the city. May could actually see her regular garbage collection route from this height, the streets looking like tiny veins threading through the urban landscape. She sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than 3 months of her salary, waiting as Ms. Wong reviewed something on her computer. "What I'm about to tell you," Ms. Wong finally said, closing her laptop, "involves one of the most powerful families in the city. The kind of people who can make problems, and people, disappear." She paused, studying May's reaction. "Are you sure you want to be involved?" May thought of Joy's trusting eyes. "That baby deserves the truth," she said simply. Ms. Wong nodded, as if May had passed some kind of test. "The child you found, Joy, is the granddaughter of business tycoon Mr. Wu. His empire spans real estate, technology, and international trade. But there's trouble in paradise." She pulled out a file. "His only son fell in love with a woman Mr. Wu didn't approve of. A talented artist from a humble background." The story unfolded like a drama May might have seen on television. The young couple had married in secret. When the pregnancy was discovered, Mr. Wu had been furious. He had threatened to disinherit his son, to destroy the young woman's career. But the couple had stood firm, until 3 days ago. The baby's mother disappeared, Ms. Wong revealed. The son is frantic. He believes his father is behind it, but can't prove anything. He thought the baby would be safer away from the family, protected by anonymity. The trust fund was his way of ensuring his child's future, even if he couldn't be part of it. May's mind raced. But why a dumpster? Surely there were safer ways. Because it had to look random, Ms. Wong explained. If Joy had been left at a hospital or church, Mr. Wu would have found her immediately. His influence reaches everywhere. But a garbage collector finding a baby? That's unpredictable. That's something his money and power couldn't control. A soft knock interrupted them. Ms. Wong's assistant entered with a tablet, showing them breaking news: prominent artist still missing, police investigate possible connection to Wu family. The article showed a photo of a beautiful young woman standing next to her artwork, Joy's mother. "We need your help, May," Ms. Wong said urgently. "You're the only person involved who Mr. Wu can't influence or threaten. You have no connections to their world. But you found Joy, documented everything, and went straight to the police. Your integrity makes you powerful." The weight of responsibility pressed down on May's shoulders. She thought of her own mother, who had faced poverty and hardship to protect her child. Now, another mother was missing, perhaps in danger, while her baby was in protective custody. "What can I do?" May asked. Ms. Wong outlined a careful plan. The police were building a case, but they needed time. May would need to continue her normal routine, but keep her eyes open. Mr. Wu's people would likely be watching the area where Joy was found, looking for clues. "Your garbage route gives you the perfect cover," Ms. Wong explained. "You can observe without arousing suspicion. We need to find Joy's mother before." She left the sentence unfinished, but May understood the urgency. As if on cue, May's phone buzzed with another anonymous text: "The artist's studio. Tonight. Come alone." May showed it to Ms. Wong, whose expression tightened. "It could be a trap," she warned. "But it could also be our only lead. I can have plainclothes officers nearby, but they can't be seen. Mr. Wu has people in the police department too." May thought of her mother waiting at home, of the comfortable predictability of her life before finding Joy. She thought of the missing artist, probably terrified, separated from her baby. She thought of the young father, forced to abandon his child to protect her. "I'll go," May said firmly. "But first, I need to know everything about the artist's studio. Every entrance, every exit." She surprised herself with her own determination. "And I need to see Joy." Ms. Wong made a phone call, and within an hour, they were at the Children's Services facility where Joy was being kept. Through a window, May watched the baby playing with a social worker. Joy seemed happy, unaware of the drama surrounding her existence. "She looks like her mother," Ms. Wong said softly, showing May a photo on her phone. The resemblance was striking. The same bright eyes, the same gentle smile. As they left the facility, May felt a new sense of purpose. Her simple life had led her to this moment, where she could make a difference in ways she never imagined. The city streets, which she had known only in their pre-dawn emptiness, now felt alive with possibility and danger. That evening, as she prepared to visit the artist's studio, May took one final photo of her mother sleeping peacefully in their small apartment. If anything happened to her, she wanted the police to know where to start looking. She touched the jade pendant her mother had given her for luck, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the gathering darkness of the city she thought she knew. The artist's studio was located in an old industrial building that had been converted into creative spaces. As May approached in the dim evening light, she noticed security cameras mounted at strategic points, all dark and seemingly inactive. Someone had deliberately disabled them. Her heart pounding, May followed Ms. Wong's careful instructions, using the service entrance at the back of the building. The door was unlocked, just as the anonymous message had suggested it would be. The hallway smelled of paint and turpentine, mixed with the musty scent of an aging building. Studio 507 was at the end of a long corridor. Through the frosted glass, May could see a faint light, not the bright fluorescence that would normally illuminate an artist's workspace, but the soft glow of what seemed to be a single lamp. She hesitated for a moment, touching her mother's jade pendant for courage, then slowly turned the handle. The studio was massive, with high ceilings and walls covered in stunning artwork. Huge canvases depicted cityscapes that seemed to blur the line between reality and imagination, familiar buildings transformed by vibrant colors and unexpected perspectives. May recognized the style from the news article photo of Joy's mother. "You came alone. Good." The voice came from behind a large canvas. A young man stepped into view, his expensive clothes wrinkled and his eyes red from lack of sleep. May recognized him immediately from the family photos Ms. Wong had shown her. This was Mr. Wu's son, Joy's father. "I had to see the person who found my daughter," he said, his voice trembling slightly. "To thank you for taking her to the police, for doing the right thing." He ran his hands through his disheveled hair. "I've been hiding here, in my wife's studio, hoping she'll find a way to contact me." May remained near the door, remembering Ms. Wong's warnings about being careful. "Your wife, is she safe?" He moved to a workbench and picked up a small red envelope. "This arrived yesterday. No postmark, no fingerprints." He handed it to May. Inside was a small key and a series of numbers written in delicate handwriting. "It's from her. I know her handwriting, but I can't figure out what it means." May studied the numbers. They seemed familiar somehow. Then it hit her, they were similar to the location codes she used on her garbage collection route. Each dumpster had a specific number for tracking purposes. Was Joy's mother trying to tell them something? "These could be location markers," May explained, hope rising in her voice. "I know these areas, they're all on my collection route." She laid out a map from her phone, pointing to specific spots. "These are all places where service alleys connect, creating paths through the city that most people don't know about." The young man's eyes widened. "The key," he said suddenly. "There's a storage facility near one of these points. We used to keep her larger artworks there." His hands were shaking as he gripped the small key. "She's leaving us a trail." Just then, they heard footsteps in the hallway. The young man quickly pushed May behind a large canvas. "If that's my father's people, you can't be seen here. You're our only outside connection." The footsteps grew closer, then stopped right outside the studio door. May held her breath as the door handle turned. The door opened to reveal a security guard, his flashlight beam cutting through the dim studio. "Just checking the premises," he called out. "Mr. Wu asked us to keep an eye on his daughter-in-law's property." "Everything's fine here," Joy's father responded calmly, though May could hear the tension in his voice. "I'm just collecting some of her things." The guard lingered for a moment, his flashlight beam sweeping the studio. May pressed herself as flat as possible behind the canvas, praying he wouldn't do a thorough search. After what seemed like an eternity, they heard his footsteps retreat down the hallway. Once they were sure he was gone, May emerged from her hiding place. "We need to check that storage facility," she whispered. "But they'll be watching it." "Not if we use your garbage route," the young man said, a plan forming in his mind. "You have legitimate access to all those service alleys. You can move through the city without attracting attention." He paused, looking at her intently. "But I understand if you don't want to risk it. You've already done so much." May thought about Joy, safe in protective custody. She thought about this young couple, willing to give up everything to protect their child from a controlling patriarch. She thought about her own mother, who had faced the world alone to give her daughter a chance at a better life. "I'll help," she said firmly. "But we need to be smart about this. When does the storage facility open?" They spent the next hour planning carefully. The storage facility opened at 6 a.m., right in the middle of May's normal route. She could legitimately be in the area, doing her job, while checking the storage unit. The young man wrote down the unit number and everything else she needed to know. As May prepared to leave, he grabbed her hand. "Why are you helping us? You don't know us. This isn't your problem." May thought about the tiny baby she had found in the dumpster, about the trust fund documents, about the love that had driven these parents to such desperate measures to protect their child. Because, she said simply, every child deserves a chance to be raised by parents who love them this much. She left the studio the same way she had entered, her mind racing with plans for tomorrow morning. The city was quieter now, most of its windows dark. But somewhere in this maze of streets and alleys, a young mother was hiding, leaving breadcrumbs for those brave enough to follow them. As May walked home, she noticed a black car slowly cruising past. The same car she had seen earlier near the studio. She kept her pace steady, turning down a narrow alley she knew well from her route. The car couldn't follow her there. Tomorrow would be dangerous, but for now, she just needed to get home safely. Her mother would be waiting up, worried again, but this time, May had a feeling that she was exactly where she needed to be, doing exactly what she needed to do. Dawn was breaking over the city as May guided her garbage cart through the familiar alleys. She had barely slept, her mind replaying the events in the artist's studio over and over. The weight of the small storage key felt heavy in her pocket, a constant reminder of what was at stake. She'd altered her route slightly to reach the storage facility exactly at 6 a.m., when it opened. Her heart nearly stopped when she spotted two men in dark suits standing near the entrance, sipping coffee and trying too hard to look casual. Mr. Wu's people, no doubt, watching for any sign of his daughter-in-law. May had prepared for this. She pulled out her phone and called the facility's office number that Joy's father had given her. "Hi, this is City Waste Management," she said in her most professional voice. "We've had complaints about overflow from your dumpsters. I need immediate access to the service area." The sleepy security guard buzzed her through a side gate, barely glancing at her uniform. The men in suits paid no attention to a garbage collector doing her job. This was exactly why Joy's mother had chosen these service routes for her coded message, invisible to those who saw themselves as above such mundane matters. Unit 2317 was on the third floor. May took the service elevator, her hands trembling slightly as she held the key. The corridor was deserted, cameras blinking silently overhead. She found the unit and glanced around one last time before sliding the key into the lock. The storage unit was massive, filled with wrapped canvases and art supplies. But what caught May's eye immediately was a small red light blinking from behind a stack of paintings. She moved closer and found a laptop, its screen displaying a video file ready to play. With shaking hands, May pressed play. Joy's mother appeared on screen, looking tired but determined. "If you're watching this," she began, "you've understood my message. I'm safe, but I can't reveal my location yet. There's something everyone needs to know about Mr. Wu's business empire." The next 10 minutes of video revealed a story more complex than May could have imagined. Joy's mother, an artist with a keen eye for detail, had discovered discrepancies in Mr. Wu's company records while working on a commissioned mural for his corporate headquarters. Hidden behind the legitimate business operations was evidence of tax evasion on a massive scale. "I didn't go looking for this," the woman explained in the video. "But once I found it, I knew it was why Mr. Wu didn't want me in the family. He was afraid I'd discover his secrets. When I confronted him, he threatened to make sure I'd never see my baby again." She paused, wiping away tears. "That's when we knew we had to protect Joy at any cost." May's phone buzzed, a text from Ms. Wong, "Wu's security team is heading to the storage facility. Get out now." Her heart racing, May quickly photographed several documents that Joy's mother had left with the laptop, then closed the unit and hurried toward the service elevator. As the elevator doors opened on the ground floor, May heard voices approaching. She quickly pushed her cart into a nearby maintenance room, leaving the door open just a crack. Through the gap, she saw three men in expensive suits hurrying past, led by the facility manager who looked nervous and apologetic. "Mr. Wu insists on inspecting the unit personally," one of the men was saying. "He'll be here within the hour." May waited until their footsteps faded before slipping out. She pushed her cart purposefully toward the exit, nodding to the guard as she left. The men in suits were still by the front entrance, now joined by others who spoke urgently into their phones. As she turned the corner, May's phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from an unknown number, the Golden Lotus Tea House. 11 a.m. Come alone. She recognized the handwriting in the attached photo. It matched the numbers from yesterday's red envelope. May's hands were steady now as she continued her route, her mind processing everything she had learned. This wasn't just about a family dispute anymore. The evidence she had photographed could bring down one of the city's most powerful men. No wonder he had been so desperate to keep his daughter-in-law quiet. She thought about Joy, safe in protective custody, and about the courage of her parents. They had orchestrated this elaborate plan not just to protect their baby, but to expose the truth. And somehow, fate had chosen a humble garbage collector to play a crucial role in their scheme. By 10 a.m., May had finished her route and rushed home to change. Her mother was sitting at their small kitchen table, worry lines creasing her forehead. "You're mixed up in something dangerous, aren't you?" she asked quietly. For the first time, May told her mother everything. About finding Joy, about the artist's studio, about the storage facility. Her mother listened in silence, then stood and went to her bedroom. She returned with a small box. "Your father was an investigative journalist," she said, opening the box to reveal old press credentials and notebooks. "He died because he was brave enough to expose corruption. I never told you the whole story because I wanted to protect you." She pressed one of the notebooks into May's hands. "But now I see you have his courage." May's vision blurred with tears as she hugged her mother. "I'll be careful," she promised. "But I have to see this through." Her mother nodded, then took off her jade pendant, the one she had worn every day since May was born, and fastened it around May's neck. "For protection," she said simply. "Now go. You have a tea house to visit." As May headed downtown, she felt the weight of everything that had happened bearing down on her. The jade pendant around her neck reminded her that fighting for truth ran in her blood. Whether collecting garbage or exposing corruption, dignity came not from what you did, but how you did it. The Golden Lotus Tea House was just opening its doors as she arrived. Through the window, she could see a solitary figure at a corner table, face hidden behind a newspaper. May touched the pendant for luck and walked inside, ready to face whatever came next in this extraordinary journey that had begun with a tiny cry from a dumpster. The Golden Lotus Tea House was decorated in traditional style, with wooden screens creating private nooks throughout the space. Soft traditional music played in the background, mixing with the gentle sound of a small indoor fountain. As May approached the corner table, her heart skipped a beat. The woman behind the newspaper was Joy's mother. She looked different from her photos, her long hair now cut short and dyed a different color, but her artist's hands were unmistakable, adorned with small paint stains that no amount of scrubbing could remove. She lowered the newspaper slowly, her eyes quickly scanning the tea house before meeting May's. "Please, sit," she said softly, pouring tea from a delicate pot. "I've been wanting to meet you, the woman who saved my daughter." Her hands trembled slightly as she set down the teapot. "My name is Lynn." May sat down, taking in every detail of the woman before her. Despite her obvious exhaustion, there was a quiet strength in her bearing. "The evidence in the storage unit," May began, but Lynn raised a hand to stop her. "Before we discuss that, I need you to understand everything," Lynn said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mr. Wu's corruption goes deeper than tax evasion. I discovered that he's been using his shipping companies to help criminal organizations move money internationally. The art world, my world, was perfect for this. High-value paintings, subjective pricing, wealthy private buyers." She paused as a waiter approached, resuming only after he had moved well out of earshot. Mr. Wu was using my gallery connections without my knowledge, using the purchase of artwork to clean dirty money. When I realized what was happening, I began gathering evidence. But then I became pregnant with joy. May sipped her tea, noting how the expensive blend contrasted with the simple clothes Lin now wore to avoid attention. That's why you had to hide the evidence in your art storage unit. Lin nodded. Mr. Wu threatened to frame my husband, his own son, for the financial crimes if I went public. He said he'd make sure Joy would grow up with her father in prison. That's when we realized we needed a plan that would protect both Joy and the evidence. A group of businessmen entered the tea house, and both women fell silent until they were seated far across the room. May noticed how Lin's eyes darted to every new customer, how she seemed to catalog every face. The numbers I left, Lin continued, weren't just location codes. They're account numbers, dates, transaction records. Everything needed to expose the entire operation. I've spent these weeks documenting everything, building an airtight case. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small USB drive. It's all here. Just then, Lin's face went pale. Through the tea house's front window, they could see a familiar black car pulling up outside. They must have followed you, Lin whispered, but her tone held no accusation. May's mind raced. She remembered the service entrance she'd noticed when she arrived, a habit from her garbage collection routes. The kitchen, she said urgently. There's an alley access. I saw it on my way in. They moved quickly but calmly, Lin leaving money on the table as they walked toward the back of the tea house. Through the kitchen's swinging doors, past startled staff members, and out into the narrow alley that May knew would connect to her familiar network of service routes. As they hurried through the back alleys, May heard Lin's soft, bitter laugh. The mighty Mr. Wu, with all his wealth and power, never bothering to learn the hidden pathways of his own city. These alleys were my escape route all along. They emerged several blocks away, in a busy shopping district ere they could blend into the crowd. Lin pressed the USB drive into May's hands. Take this to Ms. Wong. She'll know what to do with it. She checked her phone, her expression tight with worry. I need to move again. They're getting too close. Come to my place, May found herself saying. No one would think to look for you in my neighborhood. My mother. She paused, thinking of her mother's revelation about her father. My mother would understand. Lin studied her face for a long moment. Why are you willing to risk so much for us? May touched her mother's jade pendant. Because my father died fighting corruption too. And because when I found Joy, I didn't just find a baby, I found my purpose. Some things are worth fighting for. A text message lit up both their phones simultaneously. Wu knows about the USB. He's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Whatever you're planning, do it now. Lin's hands were steady as she took back the USB drive. We need to copy this data immediately. Mr. Wu will try to destroy everything once he realizes what I've documented. She looked at May with fierce determination. But first, I need to see my daughter. Just once, to know she's safe. Can you help me? May thought about the Children's Services facility, about Ms. Wong's connections, about the network of people who had come together to protect one baby and expose a powerful man's crimes. She took out her phone and dialed Ms. Wong's number. I found her, May said simply. And we're going to need your help one last time. As they waited for Ms. Wong's response, May and Lin stood in the bustling shopping district, two women from different worlds brought together by fate and a baby left in a dumpster. Above them, the glass towers of the financial district gleamed in the midday sun, their windows reflecting a city on the brink of change. Lin touched May's arm gently. Whatever happens next, she said, I want you to know that choosing your garbage route for Joy was no accident. We watched you for weeks. Your kindness to the stray cats, your respectful treatment of the homeless people you met on your rounds, your quiet dignity in doing a job that most people look down on. We knew you were someone special." May felt tears welling up in her eyes, thinking of all the mornings she had walked those routes, never imagining that she was being observed, being chosen for this moment. Her phone buzzed with Ms. Wong's reply, and as she read it, she knew that the next few hours would change everything, not just for Joy's family, but for the entire city. Ms. Wong's plan was precise and careful. The Children's Services facility had a little-known side entrance, typically used for maintenance staff. As the afternoon sun began to set, May found herself standing guard while Ms. Wong led Lin through this entrance, her heart pounding with every passing minute. The reunion between mother and child was something May would never forget. Through the observation window, she watched as Lin held Joy for the first time in weeks, tears streaming down her face as she cradled her daughter. The baby seemed to recognize her mother instantly, her tiny hands reaching up to touch Lin's face with complete trust. "We have 30 minutes, Ms. Wong whispered, checking her phone. "The data needs to be copied and distributed before Mr. Wu's board meeting tomorrow. Once it starts, he'll initiate a complete system shutdown of his company's servers." While Lin spent precious moments with Joy, May and Ms. Wong worked quickly. The USB drive contained thousands of files, transaction records, shipping manifests, art sales documentation, all meticulously organized with an artist's attention to detail. Ms. Wong's team of trusted lawyers began uploading everything to secure servers around the world. "Once this goes public," Ms. Wong explained, "there's no turning back. Mr. Wu's entire empire will crumble." She looked at May thoughtfully. "Are you prepared for what that means? His influence reaches into every corner of this city." Before May could respond, her phone buzzed with an urgent message from her mother. "Men in suits asking questions in our neighborhood. Don't come home." A chill ran down her spine as she showed the message to Ms. Wong. "They're searching for Lin," Ms. Wong said grimly. "But they don't know she's already found her way to Joy. We can use this to our advantage." She quickly typed out several messages, her fingers flying over the keyboard. "I'm putting your mother in a safe hotel, May. We protect our own." Lin emerged from the visitation room, her eyes red but her expression resolute. "The files," she said. "How much longer?" 20 minutes for the complete upload," Ms. Wong replied. "But we've already sent copies to key investigators and journalists." She paused, looking meaningfully at May. "Including some of your father's old colleagues." May felt a surge of emotion, thinking of her father's notebook at home, filled with the same kind of fight for justice that they were continuing now. But there was no time for reflection. Ms. Wong's phone suddenly lit up with urgent messages. "Wu's people are moving," she announced tensely. "They're heading to the storage facility. They must have figured out about the evidence." She looked at Lin. "Did you leave anything else there? Anything they could use to trace you?" Lin's face paled. "The laptop. It has metadata from when I recorded the video. If they're good enough, they could trace the location where I've been hiding." "I'll go," May said immediately. "I can get in through the service entrance again. They won't suspect the garbage collector." She saw Lin about to protest and added firmly, "You need to stay with Joy. I know those service routes better than anyone. This is what I can do." Ms. Wong nodded approvingly. "I'll have a team standing by, but they'll stay out of sight unless absolutely necessary. May, you'll need to be quick. Once they start searching that storage unit." "Wait," Lin interrupted, reaching into her bag. She pulled out a set of keys. "My old studio. It's on your way to the storage facility. Inside the supply closet, behind the large canvas marked Winter Dreams, there's a hidden compartment. Take everything you find there." The weight of trust in Lin's eyes made May stand straighter. This wasn't just about exposing corruption anymore, it was about protecting a family, righting wrongs, continuing her father's legacy of standing up to power. As May prepared to leave, she heard soft crying from the visitation room. Joy had woken up and was fussing, as if she sensed the tension around her. Lynn rushed back to comfort her daughter, and May watched as the baby immediately calmed at her mother's touch. "The universe has a strange way of bringing the right people together," Ms. Wong observed quietly. A wealthy artist who discovered corruption. A garbage collector with a journalist's heritage. A baby left in a dumpster. All these threads weaving together to create justice. May touched her mother's jade pendant once more, drawing strength from it. "My father used to say that truth is like water, it finds its way through any crack, no matter how small." The sun had fully set now, the city's lights twinkling like stars fallen to earth. As May slipped out of the building, she saw the familiar shapes of Mr. Wu's black cars patrolling the streets in the distance. But she wasn't afraid anymore. She had the advantage of knowing this city's hidden arteries, its secret paths and forgotten alleys. Her phone buzzed one last time, a message from her mother: "Be careful, my brave girl. Your father would be so proud." Attached was a photo of his old press badge, the one he had worn while investigating corruption, just like she was doing now. With renewed determination, May disappeared into the network of service alleys she had walked for so many years. Above her, the towering skyscrapers of the wealthy stood like silent sentinels, unaware that their foundations were about to be shaken by the unlikely alliance of a garbage collector, an artist, and a baby who had been left in a dumpster. The final pieces of the puzzle were waiting to be collected, in an artist's studio and a storage unit. Whatever she found there would need to be delivered to Ms. Wong before Mr. Wu's board meeting at dawn. The next few hours would determine not just Joy's future, but the future of justice in their city. The night air was thick with tension as May made her way through the familiar service alleys to Lynn's studio. Her years of collecting garbage had taught her every shortcut, every blind spot in the city's surveillance network. Tonight, that knowledge would help bring down one of the city's most powerful men. The studio was dark when she arrived, but she could see flashlight beams sweeping the building's upper floors. Mr. Wu's people were already searching the building, working their way down. May used her knowledge of the service entrance to slip inside unnoticed, her heart pounding but her hands steady. She found "Wintered Dreams" exactly where Lynn had described it, a massive canvas depicting a snow-covered cityscape that somehow managed to look both familiar and dreamlike. Behind it, the hidden compartment contained a thick envelope and what looked like an old diary. Just as she secured these items in her jacket, she heard footsteps approaching. May quickly slipped into the supply closet, leaving the door open a crack. Through the gap, she watched as two men in expensive suits entered the studio, followed by an elderly man she recognized from news photos, Mr. Wu himself. "Find everything," he commanded, his voice sharp with anger. "My daughter-in-law thinks she's clever, hiding behind art and idealism. But no one threatens what I've built. No one." He picked up one of Lynn's paintbrushes, snapping it in half with controlled fury. May held her breath, thinking of Joy's innocent face, of Lynn's courage, of her own father's sacrifice for truth. Mr. Wu's wealth and power suddenly seemed hollow compared to the strength of those fighting to protect a child and expose corruption. When they finally left the studio, May waited an extra few minutes before emerging. The storage facility would be next, and she needed to move quickly. The laptop had to be retrieved before they could trace Lynn's location. The streets were eerily quiet as she approached the storage facility. Too quiet. Where were the usual late-night delivery trucks, the cleaning crews, the other invisible workers who kept the city running while the wealthy slept? May's instincts, honed by years of navigating these streets, told her something was wrong. Instead of using the main service entrance, she remembered a loading dock that connected to the building's old freight elevator. It would be harder to access, but also harder to watch. As she carefully made her way inside, she could hear voices echoing through the facility. Mr. Wu's team was already here, methodically searching each floor. May took the freight elevator to the fourth floor, one above the storage unit, and used the service stairs to work her way down. Through the stairwell door, she could see 3 men attempting to break into Lynn's storage unit. The laptop was still inside, and with it, the metadata that could lead them to Lynn's hiding place. May's mind raced, considering her options. Then she remembered her garbage cart, still parked in the alley below. An idea formed, risky, but possible. She took out her phone and dialed the facility's emergency number. Security? There's smoke coming from the north stairwell, 4th floor, she reported, disguising her voice. Looks like someone's been smoking up there. The effect was immediate. The building's fire alarm began blaring, and sprinklers activated on the upper floors. In the chaos that followed, with security rushing upstairs and Mr. Wu's men temporarily distracted, May slipped into the storage unit. She found the laptop exactly where she'd left it earlier. As she was about to leave, something caught her eye, a small painting, half hidden behind larger canvases. It showed a mother and child, their faces peaceful and full of love. The mother's jade pendant was identical to the one May wore. With trembling hands, May took a photo of the painting before grabbing the laptop and making her way out. Lynn had known, somehow, that their paths would cross. She had painted this long before leaving Joy in that dumpster, trusting in the universe to bring the right person at the right moment. Dawn was breaking as May finally reached Ms. Wong's office, the laptop and studio findings secure. The lawyer's team was waiting, along with Lynn and her husband. Joy was sleeping peacefully in her father's arms, the family finally reunited. It's done, Ms. Wong announced, reviewing the final evidence. The investigators are moving in now. Mr. Wu's entire operation is about to be exposed. She looked at May with respect. Your father would be proud. This is exactly the kind of story he lived, and died, to tell. Lynn approached May, holding something in her hands. It was the painting from the storage unit. I painted this months ago, she explained softly. I had a dream about a woman with a jade pendant who would help save my family. When we were choosing where to leave Joy, I saw you wearing that pendant on your route, and I knew. May touched the pendant, thinking of her mother's wisdom in giving it to her, of all the threads of fate that had woven together to create this moment. What happens now? She asked. Justice happens, Ms. Wong said firmly. Mr. Wu will face charges. His empire will crumble. And more importantly, a family will be free to live and love without fear. As if on cue, Joy woke up and began to gurgle happily, reaching out to both her parents. Lynn and her husband embraced their daughter, tears of joy streaming down their faces. The sight made every risk, every moment of fear, absolutely worth it. 3 months later, May still worked her garbage collection route, taking pride in keeping her part of the city clean. But things were different now. Mr. Wu had been arrested, his criminal empire exposed. The newspapers had called it one of the biggest corruption scandals in the city's history. Lynn and her family had moved to a modest apartment in May's neighborhood, trading wealth for peace and authenticity. Joy was growing into a happy, healthy baby, surrounded by love. Sometimes, on her way home from her route, May would stop by their place for tea, and Lynn would show her new paintings, art that now told stories of justice, courage, and the unexpected ways that fate brings people together. The jade pendant still hung around May's neck, a reminder that dignity and purpose can be found in the most unexpected places. Her father's old press badge hung framed on her wall, next to a small news article about the Wu scandal. Her mother had added a note in the margin: truth, like water, finds its way through any crack. And sometimes, in the early morning hours as she wheeled her cart through quiet streets, May would remember that cry she heard from a dumpster, the small sound that had started it all. She had learned that heroes don't always wear capes or carry badges. Sometimes they push garbage carts, or paint pictures, or leave their babies in dumpsters to protect them. Sometimes they simply choose to do what's right, no matter the cost. The city had changed, but its heart, the network of alleys and service routes, the invisible paths that connected people's lives, remained the same. And somewhere in those quiet streets, a baby's cry had sparked a chain of events that proved one simple truth: every person, no matter their role in life, has the power to change the world.